You can start.
Thank you, madam. At the outset, I would like to convey my gratitude for calling me today as a speaker. I'll start with an admission of guilt that I have not attended a single webinar in throughout the lockdown, and so I am a little rusty in the use of Zoom. So pardon me for any technical glitches from my side. I'll try not them for them not to happen. I'll start with my presentation. I will share a small presentation, and I have kept it case based because I do not want. I am going to talk about more of teen troubles as seen from a psychiatrist perspective. So let me start. So when we talk about teenage, we all know about the hormonal changes happening during teenage and the way the body responds because of that. We also come across what we call as Ericksonian stages of social development, and in those stages, the teenage lies between the in the stage of identity versus confusion. That which simply put means that a child adolescent is actually trying to create his own identity. He's searching for his own identity in this world, and he's shaping his identity through his views about himself, through others views about himself. And since this is the time when actually he is in the secondary section of schooling, he gives more importance to peers than the peers and others than the family members. So he's in the Ericksonian stage of identity versus confusion regarding the identity. There are physical changes due to hormones. There are also psychological changes. Some of them we simply called it, in Marathi we call it Shingafutna. आणि शिंगाफुटना they start becoming assertive. They start becoming a little rebellious. They start using the term no more frequently. Rather, they use it as a sentence instead of a word. So this is the natural teenage rebellion. As we know, that there are two phases in social development. The first being terrible twos, and the second being teenage, when the child as it is developmentally is a little irritable and aggressive. So these psychological changes also happen during this phase. Then like I said, he or she, the child, is trying to develop his identity through the eyes of others, and that is why how people view him become very important. And that also brings about issues like body image issues, how I look, how am I during a social interaction. So how people think I am, considering my body image about myself. Along with that, peer relations start developing or not developing, depends on what kind of temperament the child has, because personality is yet to form completely. However, there are some temperamental traits, but temperamental traits can go through a 360-degree change by the beginning of teenage and till the end of teenage. So till the end of teenage, when the personality is actually formed, there can be a 360-degree change depending sometimes on the environment and nurturance that the child receives. So that is the time when he or she is trying to create peer relations. How healthy they are again depend on self as well as the environment. Then there are various, as you know, today there are more distractions. In the past there used to be more attractions, but now there are more distractions. So this is also the age when attractions and distractions matter. This is also the phase during which tender emotions like love arise, affection arise, and this is also the age when physical attraction starts. Physical attraction is a part of the natural emotional development. So this is also the turbulent phase of emotional
Sir,
development. And in all of this, we as psychiatrists see a whole gamut of psychological disorders. Whenever there is an issue in any of these factors, we can see problems in the form of psychological disorders. So I am going to talk basically psychiatrist perspective of teen troubles from the point of view of psychological disorders. And now I will start with.
Namaste, everyone.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So let us talk about the silence before the storm. And by that, I come to this brought by mother with complaint of irritability. Yeah, with complaint of irritability, touching walls in the house, and sniffing frequently, saying he will not go to school anymore. There was a history of preceding stressor in the form of failure in maths paper in terminal exam of 9th standard, and as a result of that, he was criticized by the teacher. Now, this was an average school going child, around used to score about between 70 to 80%. However, he gradually declined in his studies, and in the terminal exam of 9th, he failed in maths. At that time, he was reprimanded by his teacher, and gradually after that, he started hating school, so which looks like a school refusal case. But further inquiry revealed paranoid thoughts in the form of he used to feel that now that he has failed in the class, his peers or colleague children are teasing him, they are laughing at him. Even when he passes through the school corridor, people laugh at him, which were unsubstantiated. Then it was also noticed that he had kind of rigorous talk. So a 14-year-old boy, the way that a child should be speaking, the manner in which he should be speaking, did not correlate with the manner in which this particular child was speaking. He was speaking in a maybe like a 10-year-old, and there were age inappropriate ideas. So there was certain level of maturity which is expected at 14 years. No, it is obviously not complete wisdom, obviously, but there is certain amount. For example, if I don't go to school, what will be the consequences? So the child may be reluctant to share the consequences. However, here there was what we called as more of concrete thinking. Concrete thinking means, like for example, there is concrete thinking and there is abstract thinking. So abstract thinking makes an individual able to draw conclusions from a particular thing, and that makes him aware of the consequences. However, concrete thinking is like a command kind of thinking. If you tell a person to sit down, you sit down. If you tell talk in sarcasm, that person will not be able to get it. So that is concrete thinking. So he kept saying that if I don't go to school, I don't go to school. So he was unable to draw any conclusions from the same. He also had suicidal ideas on his own. Not that he was suicidal if he would be forced to go to school. He on his own, he felt like I don't feel like living, I should die. However, as I said, there was concrete thinking. He was not able to draw conclusion what may be the consequences of him dying, what may be the aftermath of the child's death. So these kind of things he was not able to express. There was a positive family history. In fact, the child's mother was a sort of a special educator working in a government setup for intellectually disabled children in Govandi or Chembur. And she had seen her own mother suffer from schizophrenia since her childhood. And so some of the symptoms were picked up by the mother and brought to me in this early stage. So what is this? So this is something which DSM-5 now calls as an attenuated psychosis syndrome, which is maybe what was called in the past as prodrome. It is not yet a diagnostic entity. We cannot diagnose it. It is more of research criteria involved, but this is something which a prodrome may look like. And if this is missed in 2 or 3 years of time, this might be a full-blown case of schizophrenia. So this sniffing, this touching the walls, which looks like obsessions, but were not obsessions on evaluation. This is something called as either some sort of stereotypic behavior seen as a part of undifferentiated schizophrenia. So this was more of stereotypic behavior, and irritability, the paranoid ideation, all taken together without the despite the lack of low mood. So all this taken together indicated towards the diagnosis of prodrome of schizophrenia or an attenuated psychosis syndrome. Since then, this child has been on medication, and he has been on anti-suicidal medications like lithium. He has been on some dose of anti-obsessional and low dose antipsychotics, and he has been doing well. The only problem, there are ups and downs. So in 3-4 months he becomes agitated, manipulative occasionally, but no frank delusions or hallucinations have come across till now. I'm seeing him for the past 2 or 3 years till date. Counseling or therapy was tried, but it was more of supportive therapy to the mother. The child really could not bear the therapy. Then there was a case of a 18-year-old master AP brought 4 months before standard 10th exams with complaints of disturbed behavior in the form of muttering to self, talking irrelevantly, like saying to tujhse shaadi karu to his mother, anger outbursts, and hitting sister. Now, preceding history elicited that he had become withdrawn and aloof for the past 1 year. That means since the age of 17, with academic decline, and he was average child academically, and now it was difficult for him to pass according to his tuition teacher. So there was academic decline in 1 year, and he had to be told to do simple chores. He seemed to have lost interest in studies. So simple chores like getting up on time, taking a bath, grooming himself, keeping some sort of routine to the day. So these simple chores had to be told to him, otherwise he would simply keep lying down. And this is what commonly is brought across to us as alshi zhala hai, or he has become lethargic. And he kept scribbling random things in the notebook. So random things which were of no meaning. So however, the children doodle a lot, but it was not doodling, it was absolutely random things, which may be again an indicator towards disorganized thoughts in going across the mind. So why I call this as silence before the storm is, the storm usually breaks out at 18, 19, 20. As we all know, schizophrenia is an illness which starts during the teens, especially in males. Females, however, can have two modes, two peaks. One, the beginning can be in the teens, or the beginning can be in the mid 30s. So, however, males, their onset can be during teens, and it is associated with poorer prognosis of schizophrenia. So the storm was yet to break out in the first case. In the second case, it was breaking out, and however, the child showed symptoms even before that. So that is what we call as negative symptoms of schizophrenia, which are basically called negative because they lie below the surface. They are not brought immediately for these symptoms like alshi zhala hai, or has lost motivation. Initially he had some amount of motivation, but now doesn't have that. And this is the stage also where it can be misdiagnosed. I would call it it's a diagnostic dilemma, that this looks superficially pretty much like depression. However, if treated by antidepressants, which is a thing which many of us sometimes do, that we consider this to be depression treated with antidepressants, which actually increase the dopamine in the brain, and instead of making the patient stabler, the patient worsens and the storm breaks out early. So this is the silence before the storm. So what are the signs to look for? So gradual changes in personality and behavior. So there are some children who are aloof since childhood as a temperament, but there are some who start becoming aloof during these teens. They start becoming withdrawn. They stop talking to their peers. They stop talking to their parents or family members. Then self-care and grooming needs, whether there is a problem with these and whether the child has to be told to do this. Then spending excessive time in the bathroom, okay, that should be a warning sign. See, it can be in case of males, especially our boys, this can be masturbation which might be happening. But we as psychiatrists, we usually then probe that what is the reason that the child is spending excessive time in the washroom, which can be what we call as catatonic posturing happening in a particular place, or they want to hide their hallucinatory behavior, and that is why they spend excessive time in the washroom. Stereotypic behavior or mannerisms, like in the first case, touching of walls had started happening. Sniffing, which without any rhinorrhea. So sniffing is another mannerism. Allegations of bullying or teasing have to be confirmed from different sources. I have seen n number of times when a child, a young adult with schizophrenia is brought who has a history of 5 years of illness, and they usually allege that other children in the class were teasing him or teasing them. They were laughing at them. They used to make fun of them, and it is taken obviously at face value by parents. It is never actually confirmed from the class teacher or from other children in the class that whether this child has been subjected to such kind of teasing or bullying. They take it at face value, and later on this comes out as paranoia, and it is realized that when that person starts working and has problems in the office also, he feels that he's being neglected, he's being talked about behind the back in the office, and when this behavior starts becoming problematic, then the person is brought that now this is not possible. However, there are signs which start right from the school age, that allegations of bullying or teasing can be unfounded, and their mind overthinking or being paranoid, and that is why this needs to be confirmed from different relevant sources around the child. Now we'll talk about the actual thunderstorm or behavior.
Sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, sir. Dr. Mati, sir.
Yes, sir.
For information of all the participants, probably due to technical issue, this meeting will get end by after 5 minutes. So please bear with us. Please rejoin again after 5 minutes with the same meeting ID, same password. Please, this is some technical difficulty. So let us hear it continues is well and good. Otherwise, Dr. Mate sir, if meeting gets stopped, we rejoin after 5 minutes. Everybody with same meeting ID and password. That's okay with all. Please,
Sure,
please.
sure. So now we'll talk about the actual thunderstorm. So this is a case of Master SB, 14-year-old child, presented with complaints of defiant behavior, going out of house repeatedly, and during one such episode of going without ticket to his uncle's house in Nalasopara. The child stays in Navi Mumbai, and he went to Nalasopara catching trains but did not buy a ticket. He was considered to be an arrogant student who backanswered teachers in school with multiple complaints in past 1 year. However, a thing to be noted, this was not the case about 2 or 3 years ago. Excessive indulgence in gaming on smartphone and talking about earning money through them. So he had ideas about playing some sort of football online, and he wanted to earn money through it, and he had all things planned that this is how I will be earning and making it big in this world. On mental status examination, I found that there was tangentiality. So a person, when he talks, and instead of keeping at one point, he keeps on shifting the points frequently, and he starts at A and ends at Z, which are not related. That is tangentiality. So there was a lot of, so that is indicative that there are so many thoughts going in the mind sorry, that the person's speech reflects what is going on in his mind. So there are so many thoughts that he just wavers from the track. So there was tangentiality, and there were paranoid delusions of jealousy and black magic. So he felt that because he's so talented and because he's going to earn a lot of money, his aunt is jealous of them, and so she is doing some sort of black magic, and that is affecting him, and that is being performed through his younger, so about 6-year or 8-year-old cousins, sisters. They, through them, this is being done. So it is basically a paranoid delusion of jealousy and black magic. And there was a family history in the maternal grandfather. So this case came to me, this child was brought to me, the reason being about 4 years ago, I had done a home visit for his grandfather who had returned from the UAE, and he had a short manic episode, and that is when I had treated him, and that is 4 years down the line this child came to me. Now, superficially, this looks like a defiant child or a child who is arrogant and rude and something maybe bad company, because that is how the parents were thinking, that he has probably fallen into bad company. And on history and mental status examination, I found that he was an intelligent child. However, this is a case of mania, a very early onset bipolar one type of mania. So this was a manic episode which had started since almost a year, and the symptoms of mania of excessive spending, excessive talking, big talks, mood congruent delusions, so psychotic features which are congruent to his mood of inflated self-esteem or high mood. Sorry. So these were the symptoms of mania: excessive spending, overactivity, decreased need of sleep. The child was hardly sleeping for 3 or 4 hours, and he was kept on wandering, which was hyperactivity of mania. That was a symptom of mania. So he was started with a mood stabilizer and an antipsychotic medicine, and the child is now 4 months into follow-up and is in complete remission. Now the mother says that he has become extremely disciplined and he's listening to everything that she says. So a defiant child can never change dramatically in 4 months. So this was a case of mania in a 14 years. So this is early onset mania, because usually it happens in the third decade of life, but bipolar starting this early is a little rare. So then there was a case of Miss NS, 17-year-old girl studying in the 11th grade of integrated schooling, brought by her doctor parents with complaints of episodes of panic, fear of performance in exams, not achieving.
Sir, please start, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. So this was Miss NS, 17-year-old girl studying in 11th grade integrated schooling, brought by doctor parents with complaints of episodes of panic, fear of performance in exams, or not achieving required scores, and had crying spells. On inquiry, however, there was no parental pressure found. The child refused that she was under any kind of pressure for scoring from the parents. And this has been a drastic shift that I have seen in the last 4 to 5 years. Initially, maybe about 8 or 10 years ago, we used to come across children who were finding it that they are under parental pressure. However, after the awareness which was created about children, what they go through during pressure, the awareness about rising number of suicides, I feel that parents now are okay with their child doing what they want to do the best. So I feel that the parental pressure is something which is not relevant now. It is more that children now are and their ideas about success. So somewhere they are being shaped through advertisements, the hoardings, the rankers shown on the hoardings, the ideas of success in the media which is shown, the packages which are being taken by so-called great institutes. So that is somewhere shaping the idea of success which adolescent learns, and that is why they are on a self-imposed pressure of I have to excel and their ideas of success. And she was also confused about ideas of success, leading to a sense of competitiveness where there should have been none. Ideally, what we say that the competition should be with our own self. However, here they start competing with other ranks, other children on their own, and therefore that she had burnt out. So integrated coaching started, and 6 months down them. So what I have seen is initially they give. So for example, let us say XYZ Institute Mumbai ranking. So XYZ Institute Navi Mumbai ranking. But when the all their centers start working full-fledgedly across India, then they start coming up with the all India ranks, and that is when the children usually come across pressure because they see that their rank is dwindling gradually. So she had burnt out 6 months into this. After treatment with medication for some time and therapy, and aptitude testing was done, and it was found that she would do much better in the commerce stream, and so she changed the stream to commerce, and now she's absolutely fine. However, a thing to note is also that the father suffered from bipolar depression, and the mother also, after this daughter's episode, about 2 years down the line, mother also had come for anxiety disorder. So I feel that family history makes it much easier for clients to seek help because they have gone through it themselves. So rather than just throwing in the genetics of that, I feel help becomes easier. Then there is a case of this particular problem child. So this was a 16-year-old girl AR brought by parents for counseling. History of frequent changes in mood, irritability, occasional tantrums. She was considered a daddy's girl by her mother, showing difference in disciplining style and decisions of parents. She had gotten into a habit of throwing tantrums to get what she wanted, had attempted suicide twice in past, and had self-inflicted wounds on forearm or hesitation cuts. She was an outgoing girl and was suspected of having a boyfriend by her parents. Suspected but not never confirmed. So this is what we call this was a girl who has what we call as borderline personality traits. And borderline, in such cases, they have a sort of all or none thinking. So when a person is it may be a close family member who talks in their favor, they will accept them their opinions. However, if that same person at some point of time says something which they do not want, or that is against across their opinion, they immediately, that person goes in their hit list. So they have sort of a all or none thinking. They have mood swings. They have a chronic sense of emptiness or loneliness, and they keep trying to seek attention from others constantly, which many a times comes across in society as flirtatiousness, if in case of girls. So this was a borderline personality girl, extremely difficult to treat. Usually seen that borderline personality, if it develops, then it with age it starts getting better in the 40s. With medication after a certain age, when the personality is, so this is like a stormy personality. There is so much of impulsivity, so much of impulsive decision, irrational decision making, that at some point of time they will go into a depressive phase. That is the time when medication help them. Their mood swings come under control with medication and therapy. So these are, we call them as crime trouble. They will come for therapy once they start believing in it, and then again they are lost to follow for a couple of months or a year, and then again when they land in a new crisis, they again seek help. So that is how the prognosis of a borderline personality is usually. Then there was a 19-year-old boy AN brought by parents under false pretext of going to doctor for his mother. This happens quite a lot. And when this happens with adolescents, they are a grumpy lot and they will not talk to the doctor, come what may. So he had complaints, though he was brought with complaints of irritability, arrogant behavior, staying out of house till late in the evening, and mother suspected him of smoking cigarettes, but he denied. Scholastic decline was seen from a 90% to barely 60s in the last 2 years. And on inquiry, he agreed to be smoking up. So this is a term which we have all to be aware of. This is the difference between smoking and smoking up. Basically, smoking up means cannabis, and this is rampant usage found in Navi Mumbai and areas around. Every I would say every nook and corner has people selling this stuff, and we see disastrous effects of cannabis happening in adolescents and young adults. Some of them landing in depressive disorders, some in amotivation syndrome, some going into psychosis. So this was the basically problem child who was brought to us by parents, thinking him to have only a behavior disorder, but the behavior was responsive, I mean, because of his habit of smoking cannabis. Then the original sin. So this was I would say a unique case of YV, a 22-year-old boy who was brought by mother. Why have I taken a 22-year-old boy? The cause rise in the further history. So was brought by mother with complaints of Vishwasghat done by him. He had lied to parents through all 4 years of engineering that he was doing fine, but reality was different. He took admission in engineering despite scoring 70% in 12th, as that was considered a safe bet by his parents. He seemed to have no opinion of his own. He said that I just took it up because my parents felt it was okay for me. He was a shy child and made friends with difficulty. He had problems in spellings and arithmetic and realized he could not get beyond first semester and stopped attending college. However, being shy and not knowing how to express his views or emotions, he did not tell his parents about this. Around the same time, he got into the habit of online gaming and lost nearly rupees 10 lakh on same over 4 years. He left home for college, sat for entire day in a cyber cafe, and returned on time at when he was expected to return from the college. Father had passed away, so this was going on for almost 4 years. His father had passed away with myocardial infarction 1 year before he was brought to me, ignorant of his son's deeds. So the father passed away thinking that the next year his son is going to become an engineer. Mother realized, however, so once the father passed away, mother had to take care of the accounts, and she came across account statements where there were significant withdrawals. She counted it. So there was an account for him for his education kept by the father separately. So he used to deposit money. The child used to tell that he has to pay fees and this and that. And from that account, gradually over a period of 4 years, he had used almost 10 lakh rupees for sustaining his habit of gaming online in the cyber cafe. Mother realized something is amiss only when she found cash withdrawals in account after the husband's demise. So who is the culprit here? Now this is not a typical deviant young adult. He now the thing to be after history and careful evaluation, what we found is that there were no traits of defiance. There was no lying with the intent of causing harm. There was no manipulative lying, except the fact that he wanted to hide his own inadequacy, and for that he was running away or escaping. So this was more of an escapist kind of lying involved. We got a psychological testing done. He had no what we call as axis 1 disorder. He had no depression, no psychosis, nothing. Obviously he was only a case for therapy, and so therapy was started. He showed good rapport with the therapist, and to the extent that then again an aptitude test was done with him, and he showed inclination towards psychology, and now he's studying to become he has joined BA psychology, and he plans to do his masters in psychology after that, and he's working with us as a volunteer in the counseling center. So this is, and obviously this is all in confirmed through parental objective data also. The mother also sees the difference. So this was a case of therapy where a child had to be taught to be expressive, had realized that he had done something big, almost amounting to criminal offense. However, thankfully, because of the sense prevailed in the mother and him, and they kept coming for therapy, and now he's doing much better. The culprit here was actually learning disability, which was never diagnosed till his age of 22. And when he came and when we assessed him, and there were spelling mistakes and arithmetic, that we realized that he had a learning disability which went undetected, and became very difficult to cope when he went into actual professional engineering course. So I'm coming to the end of my talk today about suicide. So 18-year-old girl who had just passed 12th was brought by parents with complaints of Lysol consumption to hospital. I was called in as per protocol after medical stabilization. She seemed to be staring in the distance, and rapport was to her 12th results, which the parents actually thought that after the results are out, this thing has happened. So probably she's stressed with that. But conveyed that she was disturbed since her recent breakup of a 5-month relationship with a boy elder by 7 years. Again, something which anyone would pounce upon, that this is the cause for her suicidal attempt. She considered the breakup happened because she wasn't good enough, came with serious bilateral forearm slashing the next week. So she was discharged, and next week she again came with bilateral forearm slashing, and the slashing was quite upper forearms and the arm, which is unusual for any self-inflicted wounds or what we call as hesitation cuts. These were not hesitation cuts, these were pretty deep. So on inquiry, she felt her parents had somehow consorted to that effect, that the breakup, Though parents denied knowing about the reason for breakup, and however, were glad to know about it. I found problems with the stream of her thought, that is the flow of her thought, and on further probing, she revealed voices commenting on her looks and commanding her to die. So she had auditory hallucinations which were commanding her to die and were made negative comments on her looks. She also had, she was a pretty serious case of acne, so she had also sought dermatological treatment recently and was started on isotretinoin. She was given medication, and after a second opinion, which we have to take in a 17-year-old, I started with electroconvulsive therapy along with medications, and now she's in recovery and attending her online college. Her hallucinations are almost 90% gone, though she infrequently has them, but she's not acting on them now. So we have to remember certain things when assessing a suicidal case. So first, suicidal thoughts are to be assessed only by a mental health professional, but anyone can ask about such thoughts. So any doctor, any family member should ever, even if they have that slightest notion, should not shy away from asking. You have to ask about suicidal thoughts. Asking never increases them. That is a common myth which people have, that if I ask about it, I am actually putting it in his mind. Medication which may lead to suicidal ideation, we have to be aware of. AKT, especially cycloserine, is a medication I have come across frequently causing or leading to suicidal ideation. We see whether there is a temporal relationship between starting the medication and the suicidal ideation. I have come across child receiving flunarizine or Cybelium for his migraine and developing suicidal ideation. Isotretinoin is known to cause suicidal ideation, and dermatologists do keep an eye on that, and they are worried about that. Also, some antidepressants themselves can induce suicidal ideation, and I have seen especially SSRIs if not given with a benzodiazepine cover. So sometimes it happens that they are treated by another doctor who is a non-psychiatrist, and a patient is found to be depressed or having some anxiety issues, and they do not give an anti-anxiety or a benzodiazepine and give a say sertraline, which is an SSRI. So at such times they may suddenly start having suicidal ideation. So these are some medications which may lead to suicidal ideation that we must be aware about. I would like to thank IIP Raigad again to give me this opportunity to talk on these teen troubles from a psychiatrist perspective, and I am open for any kind of questions and discussions. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Omkar, I have few questions. One of it is the first case which you described, there was a child scolded by teacher for poor performance in school or exam. So how the teacher should handle the child then for poor performance? Should they not
Correct.
scold the child, or what should they do?
I feel, see, what the problem is that many a times a child, considering the amount of and the simple numbers of children that a teacher has to handle, sometimes it is impossible for them to take into consideration every child's psychological makeup and deal with them. So I will not blame the teacher at all for reprimanding the child. He may be
And
doing
even
it for the
school must be pressurizing for performance,
yes,
grades,
yes,
everything.
yes. There are n number of political things happening in schools.
Yes.
There are n numbers of pressures being faced by teachers today. So there is never a unifactor, and that is why when we come to the topic of abatement of suicide, I personally do not believe, and I usually am vocal about in our psychiatrist forum, that the term, I mean, the clause of abatement to suicide should be removed. Suicide is no longer a crime and which can be abated too. So suicide is itself not a crime. So abatement of suicide is something which cannot be predicted. So same individuals, four individuals going under similar stress, all four are not going to take that extreme step of suicide. There is one out of them who may do that. So it is that individual's decision. No one can be called as abetting suicide unless that person has tried to commit murder by pouring something down his throat. So abatement, and so the teachers are now under pressure because of this abatement clause, and management most of the times taking their hand, I mean, just holding their hands away, and they will also in such case not stand behind the teacher.
Yes.
So teacher reprimanding, I do not feel was the actual trigger. So that is why it is always my psychological makeup, what kind of personality I am, what kind of coping mechanisms I use to deal with stress. So when there are problems in this, and when I am faced with an environmental stressor, then a particular disease or disorder may begin.
Omkar, I have one question.
Sir, I have got one. Okay.
हाँ सर बोला
नाही बोल ना बोल.
नाही तुझा विचार नंतर बोलतो.
Sir, I have got one question. If we find self-inflicted suicidal injuries, pre-suicidal self-inflicted injuries, if you find, so how should we go ahead with that? Should we inform parents, or we should take parents in confidence? How should we go?
I think absolutely parents should be taken in confidence. First of all, we have to find out whether the parents have noticed it. So that will give an indicator of that how serious that seriousness the parents are giving to it. Sometimes they may also have seen it, but they are not taking it seriously. So in that case, we need to make them aware about the seriousness. See, self-inflicted wounds need not be always suicidal behavior. It is what we call sometimes we call it as a parasuicidal behavior. That means they are doing it out of anger. Many a times we see people with dependent personality traits who are anxious, avoidant, they can't confront, and they are under emotional duress or emotional pain, and they are not able to express that. So the pain is so much that they will start with biting nails. So biting nails gives a painful stimulus, and they are actually trying to feel that pain, because that takes the mind away from the emotional pain. So it starts sometimes with biting behavior, and sometimes that progresses to cutting themselves to feel the pain. So in that case, the child is not actually suicidal. The adolescent may not be suicidal. They deny that I did not do it for dying, but that indicates that there is some emotional pain that the person is undergoing, which they are unable to express in any other ways. So the parents, once made aware of that, then we leave it up to them whether they seek help or not.
We should warn them.
Yes.
Sir, I have a question. Sir,
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question. This you presented a case of substance abuse. Which is the commonest substance which are used by these children? Now that you said it is available in every nook and corner near the schools. I mean, it's a scary thing, but which is the commonest substance they use for?
Commonest is nicotine. Nicotine is always the gateway drug. It is a socially acceptable drug it is not considered contraband. Doesn't require a license to sell it, and it is freely available. The first gateway drug is always nicotine. But teenagers now are going towards cannabis with all the social media. I think it is the responsibility of IPS, our society, as well as IAP, to create an active campaign against cannabis, because there is so much of false literature being propagated in the media, which these youngsters read about. They will come across, I've seen them quoting articles which say that the use of medical cannabis. Now the thing is, they forget that it is medical cannabis, and it is, so they will talk about it being a pain reliever in cancer, it being used in cancer, treating cancer pain. So if doctors are using it, then why can't we use it? So all of these kinds of rationalizations, they are all if you talk to any cannabis consuming teenager or an adult, he will have all these rationalizations ready, and they will simply ignore. See, the thing is, they will never, in their lifetime, they'll probably not come across a person suffering from cannabis induced psychosis. However, we come across them left, right, and center. The problem is, they come across ads showing them tobacco is causing cancer. At least that is being promoted. However, cannabis causes XYZ problems. It literally takes away the drive to achieve anything in great achievers. So this is something which they do not see, and unless they see it, they are going to consume it. So forget the judicial control, which is legal control, which is not there at all in place. But you can now see in the SSR controversy that they made it an issue and they shifted it to cannabis, whereas every police personnel will know that you get it in every corner of the city.
Every hostel also.
Is
Every
it same
hostel,
as
every
weed,
college,
sir?
everywhere.
Is it same as weed, sir? Weed?
Yes, yes. Weed is a weed. So they will call it as weed. They will call it as hash. They will call it as marijuana. They will call it smoking up. They will just call it good stuff without naming anything. They'll I just take the good stuff. So these are different street names of using cannabis.
Omkar, what was the alcoholism in adolescent?
Alcoholism, the reason I feel that cannabis is more rampant in adolescence is it is difficult to detect. If a child takes alcohol and comes home, it will be immediately detected by the mother through smell, through the eyes, etc. Cannabis is something which is missed, and they have developed strategies. So cannabis causes redness of eyes. So what these children do, they carry some sort of teardrops and drops. I think they also carry I forgot the name. It is some sort of vasoconstrictor.
Okay.
They will carry these drops in their bags. So I always tell, if you suspect cannabis, I tell the mother that you search in the bags if you are finding drops, eye drops.
Right.
So they
Right.
will put them in their eye, and that clears their eyes up. So
Right.
So if someone has consumed cannabis, it is very easy to hide from parents.
Even xylometazoline eye drops also available. Xylometazoline we use for in nose, but eye drops also available. Xylometazoline.
Am I audible now, sir?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. How early these hallucinations start, and if it is there, then how the parent should know that our child is under hallucination?
So indicators to hallucination are usually, so earliest hallucination I have seen is one case of childhood psychosis, or what we call as disintegrative disorder, childhood disintegrative disorder. So I have seen a case of 9-year-old having hallucination, but that is just very, very rare. Usually hallucinations may start in the adolescence around 16 and above, and that is usually detected as muttering to self. So when we assess for hallucinations, if we come across a child who is talking to himself, he will always ask the reason why he or she was talking. Somebody, so for example, many of us have a habit of talking to self when we are angry. Okay, so that, but we can reason it out. This thing happened, and then I was angry, and then I was just talking to myself what I could not yell at the other person. So I was talking about that. So we are able to give a justification for our muttering. However, in case of hallucinations, the individual will straight away deny that I was not doing any such things.
Omkar,
Oh, sir.
I have one question. As a president discuss a case of schizophrenia, how many of these have a infantile autism? Because autistic child, another outcome you can say is also that they may go for a schizophrenic
Stereotypical
child, right?
behavior.
That was
Right.
old hypothesis, sir. They used to say that autism may lead to schizophrenia, but that has now almost discarded. They also used to feel that refrigerator mother. So basically, mothers who do not emotionally get involved in children, their children suffer from schizophrenia. But all these are absolutely unproven hypotheses. They are not relevant theories now.
How many of adolescent autism you see? Because some whether you came across
I have come across two or three cases of adolescent autism, but mostly they are high functioning autism, so, sort of like Asperger's. The reason being that in case of severe autism, they will reach a doctor very early, not wait till adolescence. In today's urban area, I do not know about rural practice, but in urban area, parents are so vigilant about their children's performance that if the child does not utter A, by the age of 1.5 years, the mother starts panicking. Why is not he saying A? So now it is in case of autism, children they will be brought early to any doctors. Adolescent autism I have come across 2 or 3 cases where they were brought in because of their emotional issues or behavioral issues, because they were unable to cope with social interactions expected out of an adolescent. So they were considered as weird children in colleges, and then they had difficulty getting along with their peers, and that led to behavioral problems or irritability in them or depression in them, and then they landed up with me. So that is how adolescents autistic children will reach me.
So you said that high
Similar-
performance spectrum is a Asperger's one.
Sort of
do you-
Asperger. So high
Yeah, yeah.
functioning
So
means there is so
do you,
basically
yeah, do
no
you tell us
IQ
some few
impairment.
characteristics? Do you
Yes.
tell us some characteristics by which we can identify early?
So these are children. So like we say, there will be in autism. The spectrum includes problems in speech, the speech development or language development. There will be problems in social interaction. So that can include gaze, verbal interaction, behavioral interaction. There will be problems in stereotypic behavior. So certain stereotypes will be there, motor most probably, or sometimes vocal. And so these are the autistic traits. Now, high functioning usually will be children who will not have too much of language impairment, because that if that is there, then they won't go ahead and study till a certain extent. So these are usually children who go along okay in school. They are considered to be shy and reserved individuals who will keep to themselves in the class, usually labeled as a shy kid sitting in the corner and who doesn't bother about anything going. They are also considered little different children, because like we know that there are some sensory issues with autistic children. So they may not tolerate certain sounds, they may not tolerate certain textures in touch. So then they suddenly become irritable. Also, if any, so for example, consider a school picnic where a child, usual normal child, will be very happy going to a picnic, whereas autistic children will be very cranky or irritable because that is a change from their routine environment. So they will be children who will want to follow structure very very rigidly. If there is slight change in even the timetable, then they may become irritable. So these will be the indicators towards high functioning autism, that he is doing okay in school because the IQ or the intelligence is okay. However, these other traits are the difficulties.
And how do you treat them, with drugs or with counseling?
No. So
How do you treat them?
In case of high functioning autism, unless he has emotional difficulties or depression, there is no role of medication. Or unless he becomes very irritable and aggressive, there is no reason for medication. Then there is basically they have to be taught the social skills. So social skills training is to be handled by a psychologist. However, if they are not brought that early, and then obviously, like for example, I said that learning disability, a psychiatrist has zero role. But the problem is that the child lands up with a psychiatrist with emotional difficulties because of learning disability, because the learning disability was never detected. So they get labeled as stupid, as duh, as good for nothing, and they are labeled by parents, by teachers, and they go through all
Duffer.
that. Then they start seeking bad company because they don't
Duffer,
judge them.
Duffer.
Duffer, and then they land in depressive or substance use, and then they are brought to us when we tell them that, okay boss, you had learning disability. Same way, high functioning autism will only land to us usually with emotional difficulties or depression. In that case, medication.
Omkar, what about the शादी के बाद में सुधर जाएगा?
That is the biggest but these dialogues are usually told by parents that हमको ऐसा बोला गया है, और फिर so these are patients who come after starting to come.
Jay, that we have all experienced.
Omkar, I have one question. This adolescent age, already they are in confusion, peer pressure, त्यांचे स्वतःचे turmoils असतात. So while deciding the career, and they are in 12th, 10th, very decisive phase about their career, which stream to take, what to do, etc. So aptitude test, does it have any role? Because there are extreme opinions about it. Some say parents को जो समझता है उसी के साथ जाना चाहिए, and some say मतलब aptitude test is useless totally, and some say totally useful. So what's your take on that?
No, everything in excess is bad.
Yes.
So the reason for doing aptitude is very important. So I have seen a parent bringing his child for aptitude and telling the psychologist that ये result आया तो उसको बताना नहीं. So basically so then that means that the parent had decided in his mind that I want my child to do this, but because of social pressure or the child telling, he was getting the aptitude done. So in this case, whatever be the outcome, that parent is going to go in society and talk bad about aptitude testing. So aptitude testing, the reason why we are getting it done, one. Second thing is, we overdoing it? So every child of 10th or 9th should not go for aptitude testing. So there are some children who are absolutely clear. Say, let us say 5% of children are absolutely clear that I want to go for biology or maths or whatever after my 10th. So there is no point in doing aptitude at that age. There are some parents who do not wish their child to take up what that child wants to take. So that is, they find that that is the indication to do aptitude. Again, that is not an indication. Just because you want to disprove your child, you should not go ahead. But when it comes to the point of decision making, so in such cases, I'll still say that after 12th exam, when there is a time, when the results are not out, you are done with your exam, then such cases where parents want the child to think about something else other than his thinking, that is the time when they can go undergo the aptitude, so that either or gets proven. So aptitude test is, if sensibly used, is an excellent tool for guiding a person regarding the vocation.
Yeah. Just stretching the same point here, which is the right age? You said that you should do it after 12th exam or something like that.
I can't hear you.
Which is, hello sir. हा सर मला एवढंच विचारायचं आहे की ही ऍप्टिट्यूड टेस्ट आपण करणार ना, ते करिअर कधी कसं डिसाइड कर त्यासाठी करणार ना, तर विच इज द राईट एज अँड इज इट नेसेसरी टू रिपीट दॅट अँड डू यू डू दिस टेस्ट एट युअर सेंटर?
We do the
before sir answer that question, whatever sir said, I feel so it's always better to do aptitude test. Should not be done frequently. 1, 2, probably I feel so. Sir said it is not useless in doing after 10th, but I feel so after 10th there is one time to be done, and 12th 100% should be done. What I feel, and what sir has said is that's okay. But then it has to be totally unbiased aptitude test. Then only it works. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Aptitude testing, again, like I said, the right age varies. So, for example, if parents and children are absolutely confused, like for example, we have to choose a particular group after 10. So, do I want to take maths or biology or both? So in that case, if the child is confused and the parents are also equally confused, in that case, the aptitude should be done after 10th. But so the aptitude test always has 4 parameters. One is intelligence, which usually is measured through non-verbal test of intelligence or NVTI. Then there is scholastic aptitude, which includes mechanical reasoning, technical reasoning, math, arithmetic skills, etc., etc., etc. Then there is an interest inventory, which will show what the child is interested in. And the 4th component is usually a personality inventory. So that can be that different kind of tests, like 16 PF is used by some psychologists use different other tools for that. But aptitude testing should include these 4 things: intelligence, scholastic aptitude, the 3rd is interest, and the 4th is personality. When all 4 considered together, then a report is created where the vocation is advised. Also, post-testing counseling is essential. So after testing, the psychologist usually tells you, why am I suggesting this particular thing for you? And it can be discussed. So it can be a to and fro thing where the parent can say that, okay, but then if this skill is has come up, then don't you think that this vocation will also help? So it can be a to and fro discussion. Now, as far as aptitude testing for all 10 students, not really required. And aptitude can be repeated in 12th, after 12th. The reason being, children get more exposure when they go to colleges. They get more information about other vocations, about other branches, especially if they are outgoing kids who mix with others. So if they are social children, the other peers will tell them that about other vocations. Their teachers may tell them about different things. So the exposure level increases. Second thing is, personality also starts becoming more well-formed. So we say that 18 years is the time when the personality actually gets fixed. So they are nearing that when their personality is more well formed. So in that case, that is why I would prefer that aptitude test. If there is no confusion of choosing a particular stream after 10th, then aptitude is much better done after 12th.
Are there any fallacies about aptitude test? Like the test may show some result, and actually things may be different because the test has been not given in a proper context or proper
Correct.
sense.
So it is
So
like
what are the
any,
fallacies? I mean to say.
it is any like any test. So even like a CBC, if a skilled physician does not interpret it properly, if he does not see all three bloodlines going down, like hemoglobin is down, platelet is down, white cells are down. If I miss that, I am not skilled enough, then the aptitude interpretation will also suffer. So it also depends on the skill of the person doing it. So there will be fallacies involved if the person doing it is not skilled enough, because the results will be standardized, but the interpretation is done by is better done by someone who is skilled in it.
So to reiterate
Thank
that,
you, sir.
the brain behind reading the interpretation is very important. So whenever one does aptitude test, it's very important to go to the experienced one, and otherwise the interpretation becomes really different from varies from person to person.
Correct, but and also it should never be done when the child is not willing for it, because I have come across
I agree. Yes.
मारून मुटकून बसवलेली मुलं पण असतात,
नाही,
मग त्यांचे ते
नाही.
रिपोर्ट काही बरोबर इंडिकेट करत नाही.
नाही येत,
तर
नाही.
तुमच्या नजरेतून ला तुम्ही कॅटेगराईज कराल का त्यांना तुम्ही यू विल लिव्ह ऍज इट इज, और व्हॉट इज द फ्युचर प्रोग्नोसिस ऑफ ऍस्पर्जर?
Prognosis, we have to explain the prognosis to relatives, that this is person who has this certain weaknesses, his skill sets are this, his weakness or strengths are this, his weakness is this. So as far as so now a person who is high functioning autism or maybe Asperger's, who is well enough, so there will be ramifications in the workplace, there will be ramification where he should work, there will be ramification whether he should get married or not, whether he actually finds a partner who can accept him as he is. So there are so many ramifications. So these ramifications need to be explained to his support system, which may be his parents, his siblings, whatever. And then they have to be told that, okay, if you find in future, right now, this is the help we are giving, but in future, there might be new problems arising. So you should be ready to seek help at that time.
Thank you, sir. Thank
Sir,
you.
I have a question.
From my side, it's over. From my side, it's over.
Sir,
Thank you.
if there is an academic downfall, then in such patients case kids, does the aptitude test should be made compulsory? As in, if there is a significant academic downfall, if
No, so in that case, we have to take a detailed history first. See, generalizing aptitude test to everyone who has an academic decline need not be necessary. For example, I'll give you, like I was talking about side effects of online school. Right now I have a child who is depressed, and his academic decline is simply because he was doing other things instead of attending class because the video was off. So the depression is reflecting in his agitation and aggression at small things, and his loss of focus because of that. But in this case, if history shows me different reason, there is no point in making the child undergo an aptitude test. That is something which can be done by someone who has made a business out of it. Not at all advisable.
thanks.
One more question, Omkar. Nowadays, the kids know about their sexualities, girlfriends, boyfriends. They are made very early in the school itself. So I know one case, one child who was sidelined by all his peers in the class because she declared that she is a lesbian. And that time she was in 9th standard. So it was a very difficult situation for her and her parents. But then she got to the college, and then she started working towards this LGBTQ all things. So do you think 9th, 10th, this is very early to decide these things or declare or say something about it? What the advice given to the child should be?
The minute I start developing hormones, that is the minute when I will start knowing about my attraction towards a particular sex. So I don't think, but yes, you have to keep them, keep a watch, or I won't say watch. You have to keep them in talks. So it is like a diplomatic thing. You have to keep them talking, because I have also seen cases who, because they were not accepted by society, or they felt they may not be accepted by society, they got too much into online chat forums and discussions on LGBTQ, and they developed a sort of confusion which was not actually there. So they had to be, so they were homosexual tendency, but they started thinking about themselves as transgenders, as gender identity disorder. So what happens with us in our second year of MBBS, that we start feeling that we are suffering from all illnesses, because that is, we are getting information, we don't have knowledge. So these youngsters will turn to these online chat forums because their parents or their society is not open enough about talking about it, and that is why they will get their information from online forums which may not be relevant in their case, and they may start feeling confused about that. So I have also seen about this. So it is a double-edged sword, but so we have to just keep the communication channel open, and we have to tell the parents that you have to keep the communication channels open. If you shut your eyes and tell him to close his mouth, it is not going to happen.
But Omkar, in this case, right, what Nirima says, somebody had declared very early age, but there is period between, transitional period, we may not able to decide what you are, right? I think that counseling and psychological part is very important. You should focus on
Absolutely.
career at this stage,
So,
right? It is not important at this, right? That should be imbibed on the parents as well as to the child. It's not important. See, Rene do aise hi, what you think, but it's not at present is important, right?
No, so we have to just create the sense of confidence in the child that whatever you are, we will accept you. So the parents have to imbibe, once they are counseled about this, the only confidence that the child requires is whatever I am, I will have my family behind me. Once they are confident about this particular thing, then they will be able to take on the world. But if they are not confident, they don't feel belonged in the house, then obviously they will seek explanations outside.
We go for vote of thanks. Sanjeevani, over to you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I thank Dr. Omkar Mate sir for giving us such an excellent and very informative webinar. I thank Dr. Dabadkar sir, Mohite sir, Gangulia sir, and respected senior for attending the webinar. I thank Dr. Sunita Ingre ma'am and Nilima Bhandarkar ma'am for organizing such a useful webinar. I thank respected colleagues, dear friends, and audience. Thank you so much.